Most people think that faith and reason are opposites. Faith sounds like trust, while reason sounds like proof. Because of that, it might seem like you must choose one over the other if you care about truth. But do you really have to choose? My name is Jorge, and in this video I want to talk about whether faith and reason are compatible ways of reaching truth, or whether one must be chosen over the other. I think that faith and reason can work together in the search for truth. Before we go right into this topic, I want to go over 3 terms that I'll be using throughout this video. The first term I'll be using is reason. And by reason, I mean the use of logic, observation, and arguments to think carefully about what is true. The next term I'll be using is faith. By faith, I mean trusting in truths that go beyond what human reason can fully prove on its own, especially in a religious context. Finally, I'll be using the term truth. By truth, I mean what is actually the case, or in other words, what really corresponds to reality. These simple definitions should be enough to make the question clear. Now that we've talked about the definitions of the terms I'll be using, I also want to talk about the philosophers that will be involved in this topic. There are 3 main philosophers, and I'm just going to give a quick background of these philosophers so it is easier to understand why they matter. I found this background information in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. So the first philosopher I'll be mentioning throughout this video is Thomas Aquinas. And he matters because he was one of the most influential thinkers in philosophy and theology. And his ideas still matter today as people study reason, faith, law, virtue, and the common good. One of his books, called the Summa Theologica, was meant for beginners, but it is now treated as one of the most important works in medieval philosophy and theology. Another philosopher that will be mentioned pretty briefly is Augustine, and he matters a lot because he became one of the most important early Christian philosophers, and his ideas helped shape Western philosophy for a long time. He still matters today because people continue to study his views on knowledge, free will, skepticism, and the relationship between faith and reason. Lastly, one of the philosophers I'll be using is the one that strongly objects my claim, which is W.K. Clifford. And he matters because he gives one of the clearest modern challenges to my topic. His essay, The Ethics of Belief, has helped shape debates and epistemology about whether belief must always be based on sufficient evidence. It argues that people should only believe something when they have enough evidence for it. Now it's time to get into the main topic. The main supporting reason comes from Thomas Aquinas. In his book, the Summa Theologica, Aquinas argues that humans need knowledge revealed by God in addition to philosophical science built by human reason, because some truths about God exceed what reason can fully grasp. At the same time, he also holds that some truths about God can be known by natural reason. Aquinas is making an important distinction. He thinks there are some truths that reason can reach on its own, such as certain truths about God. But other truths go beyond human reason and require revelation. And by revelation, I mean truth that God makes known to people rather than something humans can figure out completely on their own. Aquinas gives a simple example that helps explain this. He says an astronomer and physicist can both prove the same conclusion, like the earth is round. However, they do it in different ways. In the same way, philosophy and sacred doctrine can sometimes speak about some of the same truths, but they do not do it in the same way. Another example of this is God's existence. Reason can know that God exists, while sacred doctrine can also teach that truth through revelation. What I found most convincing is that Aquinas does not reject reason. In Question 1, Article 8, he explains that sacred doctrine still uses reason. It can answer objections, make some things clear, and make use of philosophers where natural reason has reached the truth. Aquinas gives an example by pointing out Paul quoting the poet Aratus. For we are also his offspring. In other words, even a non-Christian poet could say something true that sacred doctrine could use. So my main supporting point is this. Aquinas gives a model in which reason can know some truths and still help clarify and defend faith, even though revelation is needed for truths that go beyond reason. That is why I think faith and reason can work together. Now, this idea did not begin with Aquinas alone. John Rist explains that Augustine also sees faith and reason as connected. According to the introduction to the Cambridge Companion to Augustine, Augustine treats faith as a beginning of understanding, and reason helps a person grow into a clearer understanding of what he believes. Rist's own chapter also says that Augustine thinks reason can know some things about God in this life, but not enough for happiness and salvation, and that faith begins the search, while understanding grows later as reason deepens what we believe. A simple way to understand this is like this. Faith begins with the search, and reason helps deepen it. So Augustine is not saying believe and stop thinking. He's actually saying belief can lead to understanding. He helps show that Aquinas is working within a broader tradition where belief and understanding are connected. Now, let's take a look at a very strong objection to my claim from W.K. Clifford. In his essay, The Ethics of Belief, Clifford argues that people should not accept a belief unless they have enough evidence on it. His famous ship owner example helps show why. In that example, a ship owner talks himself into believing his ship is safe, even though he has real reasons to doubt it. Clifford's point is that the problem is not whether the ship sinks, but that the belief was formed irresponsibly because he cut off the sense of doubt instead of investigating it. The objection to my position is this. If faith goes beyond sufficient evidence, then it is not intellectually justified, and it cannot be a reliable path to truth. This is a strong objection because it goes directly against the idea that revelation can take us beyond what reason can independently prove. Alright, so I do think Clifford's objection is strong, but I do not think it fully defeats my claim using Aquinas. First, Clifford is right to criticize careless belief. Belief that ignores questions, avoids checking the facts, and accepts something just because a person wants it to be true. That kind of belief is weak because the person does not question it or test it. He thinks that when we believe for bad reasons, we weaken our habit of questioning things honestly and investigating them fairly. Aquinas still gives reason an important role. He thinks reason can discover some truths, help explain what faith teaches, and answer objections, even if it cannot prove every revealed truth. In his view, sacred doctrine can still make use of reason and of philosophers when natural reason has reached something true. My response to this is, going beyond reason is not the same as going against reason. Aquinas is not saying that people should believe whatever they want. He's saying that reason can take us part of the way, and revelation can take us further without contradicting what reason discovers. That is why I think Clifford's objection is strongest against blind faith, not necessarily against examined faith. Blind faith ignores questions. Examined faith still takes reason seriously, even when reason cannot fully prove every truth. Now, to return to my original question. Are faith and reason compatible ways of reaching truth, or must one be chosen over the other? My answer? They can be compatible. Thomas Aquinas gives the strongest reason for that view. Some truths can be known by natural reason. Other truths require revelation, and reason can still help explain and defend faith. Augustine supports that general direction by treating faith as a starting point for understanding, not the end of thought. Clifford gives a serious warning that belief without evidence can become irresponsible, which is why faith should never be used as an excuse to stop thinking. Look, faith and reason may not be identical, but they do not have to be enemies.